Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. Great to see you, Isaac.
Hey, good to see you, Doug.
Let's go sit down and chat.
Yeah.
This is Jessop's Journal. Today we've got Isaac Childs, and to prove you were actually here, you gotta sign in the book.
Heck yeah, sure.
So Isaac, thank you very much for coming on Jessop's Journal today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. So, you and I met in a weird kind of way because you have the company that I use a lot called Rustico. And so I got this old journal, and I showed it to you, and it was a little tattered.
Yeah,
So-
it was well used.
Yeah. So thanks for fixing it up.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did you meet your wife?
Backseat of a Jeep is the short answer, actually. But it was right about the same time, probably a little bit earlier, but right as school was getting back into its fall semester, and a buddy of mine had an old Jeep that we wanted to take back into the backcountry during the fall season, and of course we had to have some girls go with us.
Of course, you're gonna need company. Come
Yeah,
on.
got to have company, and so we stopped by one of our good friends' apartment, and one of her new roommates for this fall semester was Becky, my wife, or future wife. Didn't know it at the time, and we just invited her on a ride in a Jeep, and she luckily said yes, and we took off. Went on this route up behind Provo Canyon and down in Utah County by BYU, and it was late in the evening, or getting in the fall where weather starts to turn south, but we're still wearing kind of summer clothes, so we basically froze to death in the last 2 hours of that long Jeep ride, and so we were cuddled up, and of course,
Oh, darn. I
you
mean,
shoot,
come on,
I had to wrap my arm around her and keep her warm. It was a great way to meet someone. So.
Smooth, Isaac.
Yeah,
smooth.
yeah, really smooth. Not unintentional, but it worked out.
How long have you guys been married now?
18 years.
Well, congrats. Kids?
3 kids.
Okay.
So 2 boys, 2 older boys, one's 16, one's 14, and then an 11-year-old daughter. She's my youngest. Yeah.
If you had to live in either the beach or the mountains,
That's a tough one. For me, having lived in both places long enough to kind of know, it's the mountains.
really?
Yeah, which is kind of funny because I really do love the ocean.
Yeah.
But I have to get back to my roots.
Yeah. So I have to admit, my cheat answer is, because I grew up 14 miles from the beach, I'd want to go to the beach in the winter and the mountains in the summer. But hey,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good answer. But I would rather live in the mountains and travel to the beach.
Now you
That's the way
talking about
I do
travel. You've traveled a fair amount.
Yeah, yeah.
So why do you like to travel?
I think it's part of my nature, but I think it's because I've always felt like there's so much more out there, and traveling just allows me to experience that. And I think it's I think I've done enough travel to know the more you do, the more you don't see, and the more you want to see.
Right.
And so I do think it kind of lends to itself. But for me, I've naturally been this very independent, what's on the other side of the ridge type of guy.
Yeah.
And so the further I can go, the better.
Okay, and I realize this is like picking a favorite kid or something, but out of all the traveling you've done, what was your favorite? The one that you'd say, I'd recommend to somebody else, or gosh, if I had a chance, I'd go back there again.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is like picking a favorite. So many different places for different things. So I'm going to give you 2.
Okay.
I can't do one, but I can do 2 just because of how different they are. So if it's an ocean beach kind of islands, absolutely Tahiti. Tahiti, Bora Bora, that area was mind-blowing, and just the exact type of vacation you're thinking of when it's traveling to see the islands. But if you also want to see just awesome landscape, awesome mountains, great land with history, then you have to go to Peru. You have to go see Machu Picchu, and you have to go see Cusco, and
that surprises me.
Kind of feel the magic that's in that place.
My personal opinion is that if stories aren't recorded, if they aren't written down it's almost as though those ancestors didn't exist, you know, and I think that would be a shame. And so bluntly, that's the reason I love some of the stuff you guys do. But was there someone that believed in you before you believed in you?
Absolutely. Do I have to just name one?
No,
So,
give me some. Okay.
so I'll give you a few.
Okay.
There was one when I was pretty young, a youth group leader of mine. His name was Sam Bellows. Lived down in Santa Quinn, Utah, but just knew exactly who I was and really helped guide me in that. And then when I was about 17, I actually knew a guy, or met a guy that lived up in Covered Bridge Canyon where I lived. His name is Lane Phillips. And I admired him because he lived in a log cabin. He turned wood for a living. He was a wood turner,
Wow.
so he'd build amazing, beautiful vases out of wood and burls. And he was also into falconry. So he had falcons and hawks, and just was this awesome artist that really taught me how to use my creativity and how to grow. I think he was actually probably planted those seeds of how I could use my hands and be creative in a lot of ways. Probably the biggest mentor was my uncle Jim, late James Loveland, and he was probably the first one to really look at what I was doing with Rustico and believe that it could happen and that I could be the one to do it. So
Yeah. Well, I can tell that those guys made a difference in your life.
yeah, they did. They were pretty influential, for sure.
What are you doing to pay it forward?
You know, I feel like that's a lot of what Rustico is about. Our purpose statement at Rustico is to help others step outside of themselves and reach within, and to inspire them to live intentionally and leave their mark. And I feel like that's how I'm leaving a mark, is by providing content and product that will allow other people to be reflective, to ask those questions of themselves. You know, who mentored me, who inspired me, and write their stories down, and look at those, and then figure out how to also leave their mark. So I really feel like that is what my purpose is with Rustico, and has been since the start.
I mean, that is like gold. I've seen some of your journals. You got a lot of stuff written down. How did you get into the journal writing in the first place?
A lot of that comes back to me growing up as a kid, and back to my traveling.
Yeah.
I mean, it really started for me with my travels. Like, I wanted to remember where I'd been and what I did, and so writing that stuff down was pretty important for me, and the experiences I had while I traveled. Really, it was even more than just like writing the experiences, but like who I wanted to become from that, and what I was learning out of that, and then being able to kind of watch me progress and grow through the journal writing. So it started at an early age. I mean, I was traveling all over the Western U.S. by the time I was 16, 17 years old.
Really? Wow.
Mostly because I like to climb. I like to be outdoors. I like to hike, and so, you know, me and a lot of my buddies were always constantly in the back mountains, and you know, from surfing on the beaches in San Diego to
there you go.
climbing Yosemite and down in Zion's National Park. You know, that was our playground, and so writing those experiences down just came natural to me. And I think naturally that's how I've always been. I wouldn't say by any means I'm a writer in the sense of a content writer or someone that actually puts it out there, but absolutely I do write, probably more for myself. So,
What was your first paying job?
So first paying job outside of like hauling hay, because I lived out in
So
I lived out in the sticks, right in the on the farms, and so hauling hay at like 10 or 11 years old was pretty standard. But
Oh yeah, I've hauled hay too before.
yeah,
Hard work.
I never considered that. Yeah, hard work, and so I never considered that actual work. I just thought that was part of the job, you know, part of growing up. First real job was 14, and it was at Rose Bakery in Payson, Utah.
Really?
I don't know if you remember Rose, or it was just a pretty classic bakery in that little main street down there.
So what they have you doing?
I cleaned the back bakery. I mean, my job after school, I could ride in after school right around 2:30, and I'd be there till 10 every day, making a solid $4 an hour. It was good money.
Did you get all the donuts you could eat?
No, I couldn't touch the donuts.
Really?
Oh, and that bakery was a
come on.
mess. Oh yeah, no, I was not allowed to have the donuts. But he would sell out so the bakers would be up at 4:30. They would have most of their donuts sold by noon, and I'd show up at 2:30, and my job was to make sure it was clean for them to make it again next morning at 4. And so I'd get done at 10, right about the same time. 4 hours later, they'd come back in and just make a mess. I swear every day they did their best to just make it as dirty as possible for me.
Just to mess with Isaac.
Yeah, oh yeah. I was like, I swear they just put the flour all over the floor.
Yeah, well, yeah. So what did you learn from that first job that's kind of carried you through life? Anything in particular?
Yeah, well, first I learned I didn't want to work in food anymore. But I did. I learned, one, like how awesome it was to see a product being made. Garth, who owned the bakery and was the baker there, was pretty instrumental in just showing me, like, hey, this is how you take a recipe and make it into something, and did a really good job of that. Hard work. I think I learned like how to put in a solid shift, and really it was pretty tough at the time for me to do that. And I also realized, like, absolutely that wasn't something I wanted to do forever, so I knew I had to progress out of that.
I saw you get a little emotional about talking about your uncle. So obviously he made a mark on you. When everything is said and done in this life, what do you want your kids, or your ancestors, what do you want them to remember about Isaac Childs?
I think I would want my kids or my ancestors, one, I hope they would be able to go back into my journals and really see me.
Yeah.
Right? Because I feel like it is tough to be able to say, hey, this is the one thing I remember about so-and-so. And our journals, or my journals, hopefully will allow them to go back and read, like, hey, this was the time when my dad was traveling nonstop, or here's the time when he was completely stressed out about work. But overall, the impact that I want to leave, and that impression, that final impression with my kids, is just, here's someone that lived authentic to himself and loved what he was doing every day. So I think that would be ideal.
Great legacy.
So,
thanks again for coming on Jessop's Journal today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We have some lovely parting gifts from our underwriters. Of course, you're one of them, so thank you very much for your support. I love your journals. Your team made a custom journal. Did they get the name right?
Yes.
All right.
We got the name
there you
right.
go.
That's
okay.
Great.
I love your pens.
Yep.
I'm hoping this is a copper pen.
Yep. Copper Wanderer pen. Yep.
Awesome. We're here at Taylor Cooperative. They make all my custom shirts and as well as my suits. They're going to hook you up with a free custom shirt.
Yeah, I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
Love these guys. Great.
And then you got to top it, okay? You know. And so JW Custom Hats is my custom hatter. They're now your custom hatter.
Great. I'm excited to get a hat.
There you go. And then you got to do the booze basket, okay? The folks from Ogden's own distillery, so they're going to have some fun with it. The thing I want people to remember when they watch this story is that stories have power. They help us understand each other. With another entry into Jessop's Journal, I'm Doug Jessop, ABC4 News.